Hey guys, welcome back to Wentworth Life, the channel that talks everything Wentworth. Now, if this is your first time here today, then hit that subscribe button right now for all future updates. All my social media links are underneath this video, and if you stick around until the end of this video, I will be responding to some of your comments from my previous videos. Okay guys, I am back again today with another brilliant Wentworth countdown. Today, I am going to be looking at my top 10 all-time favourite Wentworth episodes. And I'm not going to lie, I struggled with this one because there's just too many episodes that I love for different reasons. I have a feeling I might be making a part 2 video of this series because it really is just impossible to pick just 10 favourite episodes. But anyway guys, let's delve straight in. Number 10, Vera becomes Vinegar Tits. Starting this list off now with a brilliant episode. So in this episode, we see Vera having a terrible time of it at home and in work. Vera's mum is terminally ill and Vera was looking after her at home, but Vera's mum was awful to her, calling Vera names and telling her that she's useless. At one point in the episode, Vera starts to have a breakdown in the kitchen while her mum is screaming in the other room, and Vera starts to shout out, "Shut up." In work, Joan had given Vera a special assignment in order to prove herself, and that was to get to the bottom of the contraband that came in during the garden project. However, Vera ended up putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. After she saw Mr. Fletcher put a bag of substance into his locker, Vera then called in the SCSG on Mr. Fletcher, where his locker was searched, and he was then temporarily suspended while his little bags of substances were analysed. It turned out that it was just amino acids, which is a health supplement that I personally use myself when I go to the gym, so Vera was made out to be a laughing stock, and I think Joan even told Vera that she was very disappointed. Things went from bad to worse for Vera when she fell victim to a practical joke that was meant for Mr. Fletcher. But Vera was the poor bunny who ended up slipping on the kitchen floor and into a pool of vinegar in front of all the women, who found it very hysterical, especially when Vera couldn't lift herself up off the vinegar, and this is what gave Vera the nickname Vinegar Tits. It's a classic moment because it's also a huge massive nod to the original prisoner cell block H. Now, apart from Vera becoming Vinegar Tits in this episode, we also had the moment when Maxine tried to escape as a visitor. We also had a brilliant scene with Frankie and Joan in Joan's office where Frankie realised that it was Joan who hotshotted Simone. Not to mention the final few moments where Vera euthanizes her dying mother. Number 9, Joan's backstory reveal. Sticking with season 2 now, and this is the episode that literally made my mouth drop to the floor, and I also ended up having some crazy goose pimples when a huge plot twist was revealed. So in this episode, we learned a lot about Joan's backstory, where she was an officer at Blackmore in flashback scenes. The episode begins with Joan questioning Doreen in her cell, demanding to know if she is pregnant. When Doreen doesn't tell the truth, Joan hits Doreen in the face and forces her to do another pregnancy test. During Joan's flashback scenes, we see that Joan was in love with an inmate called Gianna, and Joan went out of her way to protect her, especially as Gianna was pregnant. We learned that after Gianna gave birth, a social worker took the baby away, and this angered Joan as she was watching the social worker from behind a doorway taking away this baby. Later on, in a further flashback scene, we see the moment where Joan finds Gianna's dead body after she has hanged herself, with Joan cradling Gianna's body and screaming. Towards the end of the episode, we discover that the social worker who took Gianna's baby was no other than Mr. Jackson, and Joan was out for revenge against him. It was a fantastic moment, and I was so shocked when this reveal first happened. Apart from Joan's backstory, we also had Will and Harry's feud boiling over, and when Will and Rose were involved in a motorbike accident after a van forced them off the road, Will went to Harry's house, and he was gonna beat the shit out of him, but he ended up smashing up Harry's van instead. There's also a shocking moment where Joan kills Doreen's bird and posted it into a cell in the middle of the night. It's also the episode where Frankie forced Maxine to beat up B. Smith in order to prove that she was on her side. A fantastic episode. Number 8, Maxine arrives. I just realised as I'm recording this video, we've got another moment from season 2, but for very good reason, because this is the episode where Maxine Conway arrives, literally one of my favourite characters. But Maxine doesn't arrive alone, she also arrives with 2 other inmates, Jess Warner and somebody called Kat. B was on tenterhooks in this episode because Simone Slater had told her that the Holt gang had put a hit out on her and that they would be sending somebody into the prison to sort her out. So when these 3 new characters arrived, B spent the episode trying to find out which one was going to try and kill her. Things came to a head in an intense shower scene. B was having a shower where she thought she was alone. However, someone was in one of the other cubicles next to her, and it was that new inmate Kat. When Kat arrived, she had a cast on her leg with crutches. Well, it turned out that Kat was hiding a knife in the cast, and she ended up attacking B in the showers. It was an intense, brutal fight, and I tell you what, I can still hear those knife slices. Oh my god, it was brutal. I can remember I was jumping up and down on my seat, yelling out to B to hurry up and just to kill the bitch. But luckily for B, Maxine came in and saved her after Maxine punched Kat in the face. It was after this then B and Maxine became best friends. Number 7, Kangaroo Court. An amazing episode now at our next spot, which in my opinion was such a good episode, it could have even been a season final, it was that good. Of course, this is the episode where Kaz and Frankie finally team up with the women to teach Joan a lesson and to pretty much to dethrone her as top dog. So Joan is grabbed by the women who are armed with shivs, and the women then take over the yard and they even hold Linda Miles as a hostage, and Joan is then tied to a basketball court. The women then put Joan on trial, and I absolutely love this scene because Frankie, she's the one who ends up reading out of all of Joan's charges to the women, and even Jake is there behind the gate, and he's looking really shocked at some of the things that he is hearing. Things then take a dramatic turn and someone throws a noose onto the floor, and the women decide to hang Joan on the basketball ring in front of everyone. Like literally, it was insane. You couldn't believe what you were watching. Kaz was trying to stop them, but she was being held back. Channing was ordering all the officers to do nothing because he pretty much wanted Joan dead as well. It was just nuts. Vera did, however, save Joan's life right at the end of the episode. A few other things that did happen was Joan revealing to Vera that her relationship with Jake's was all a lie. We also had Jake trying to commit suicide in his car. I just love this episode because it was the moment that we'd all been waiting for since B's death. Joan to get her just desserts, and even though Joan didn't die, it was still brilliant to watch. Number 6, B and Ali's first kiss. Now I absolutely love this episode for quite a few different reasons. Of course, this is the episode where B and Ali share their first kiss, which in my opinion was one of the most beautiful kisses on Wentworth. I always felt that once B had finally kissed Ali, everything finally made sense for her. You can see it in B's face. But this is also the episode where Doreen protests against B about the panic alarm. Now even though Doreen really annoyed me in this episode, I did enjoy the scene where all the women press the panic button at the same time, and B is just there looking up all around her, realising that she's slowly losing support. I then loved the scene where B and Kaz argue in the dining room and B orders for a vote for top dog. I always thought that B and Kaz really bounced really well off each other in this episode. I also love the scene where the women are in the laundry and Tina Mercado tries to vote twice, but Sonia Stevens catches her and then Tina is like, "Who the fuck are you, bitch?" And Sonia replies and saying, "Oh, I'm in for murder," while she's looking down in her glasses with a smirk on her face. I just love it. But I also also cried in this episode when Maxine told Boomer that she wasn't going to have treatment for her cancer, which resulted in some real heartbreaking scenes between these two characters. But by the end of the episode, Maxine did tell Boomer that she's changed her mind, she will have the treatment. And then Boomer turns around and says, well, if you need some new titties, you can have some of mine, which made me burst out laughing. It was one of those episodes where you laugh 1 minute and then cry the next. I mean, this episode had everything. Number 5, Bea and Frankie fight, plus Bea's escape. Back to season 2 now, and this is the famous episode that broke the internet. Fans went insane after this episode had aired, and for very good reason. This is the episode where Bea and Frankie had that huge fight scene in the laundry for top dog position, and it was a bloody and brutal and bloody brilliant as well. The whole episode was building and building to an insane level, and I think this is the first time where the stakes became so high in Wentworth. So Bea and Frankie, they have a huge fight which goes on for quite some time, but Bea ends up winning, and in a final twist, Bea slashes her wrists, and I don't just mean small slashes, guys. Bea literally slashed her whole wrist up to her arm, and she did this because Bea had a further plan in mind to get to the hospital. Now, Bea had been taking a drug that was slowing down her bleeding, which is what ended up saving her life. But while Bea was in hospital, Bea escaped. Bea stole some clothes and she made a run for it through the hospital. I can literally remember the first time I saw this, I had my hands over my head. I couldn't believe what was happening, and at the same time I was like, come on Bea, get out of that hospital, quick, quick, quick. At the same time, Liz had received a parcel from Bea at the halfway house, and when Liz opened it, it was a gun. Bea then walks out to the hospital and into the night. I mean, this episode, it really is one of those best moments the show had ever done, and I'm telling you guys, it's an episode that I will never ever forget. Number 4, Happy Birthday Vera. I can remember being so excited for this episode because at the time of season 5 airing, the Wentworth Foxtel Facebook page, they were doing cast interviews every week after an episode had aired, and I can remember one of the cast members saying, wait until you see episode 6, so I was really pumped up to see this episode. It was Vera's birthday, and boy, was this gonna be a birthday to remember. Joan wanted to get revenge on Juicy Lucy, who had hurt her tooth earlier in this episode, resulting in Juice needing to see a dentist. So when the time came, Juice went to the dentist where she was given some gas and air by Nurse Radcliffe, I think it was, and she went to get the dentist. Then in walks Joan Ferguson, who was dressed up as the dentist, who then proceeds to tie Juicy's hand, and then she sits on top of her, telling Juice that she has licked her last pussy. Joan then gets a scalpel and cuts out Juice's tongue. Oh god, guys. What comes next is one of the most goriest scenes in Wentworth ever, because Juicy Lucy ends up running out into the yard with blood gushing out of her mouth and down her chest, and just to make it that much grosser, Juicy then runs at Vera and a load of blood comes bulging out of her mouth and all over Vera's face and chest, and it's pretty disgusting. By the end of the episode, Vera had a present on her governor's desk, which she thinks is from Jake. But when Vera opens up the present, she gets the shock of her life, because in the present is Juicy Lucy's tongue. It's absolutely horrifying, but it's also absolutely brilliant. Number 3, the final ever episode. This was always going to be on my list, a very bittersweet moment for all of us when Wentworth's final ever episode aired, and it was only a few months ago. We knew it was going to be big. A bomb plot storyline was in the works for a number of episodes, and it ended up going off in this final episode. It was full of shocks and drama. Lou Kelly wanted to make everyone pay for Reb's death, and at the same time score herself an escape as well. When the bomb went off, it was mayhem. Half of the prison was literally gone after the explosion. There were inmates who had lost limbs, and other characters had even been killed. On top of that, Anne Reynolds loses her shit and she tries to kill Vera, but Joan Ferguson arrives on the scene and saves Vera by snapping Anne's neck, as you do. Joan then gets Vera out into safety, where they then have their little final chat, and Joan then walks off into the night, which is a beautiful, beautiful scene. We also had Ali seeing B in spirit form before getting rescued, and by the end of this episode, guys, there were lots of tears. Like I said, it was a real bittersweet ending with lots of storylines left open to our imagination, or maybe some of these storylines were left open to a possible return one day. Number 2, the Season 7 final. Another huge episode now, which involved the concluding part to the big Wentworth siege. Sean Brody, Mari Winter and a few men were holding the women and Vera and Linda hostage. The episode began with the murder of Costa, and the death count kept rising throughout the episode when Sean shot and killed Boomer's mum, Mae Jenkins. To make the episode even more crazy, Vera then went into labour. The women were then dragged to the roof in order for the men to escape by helicopter, and then Liz and Boomer, they're left to help Vera give birth. But the rooftop helicopter escape thing was all a setup and the two men were caught, but then Sean and Mari, they've taken Ali hostage and they're dragging her out with them. However though, Ruby goads Mari into chasing her. Then out pops Rita, who ends up having a little bit of a scuffle with Mari, but then Ali, she gets her hands on a gun and she shoots Mari in the leg, and then Sean Brody in the head. Before the police descend on them and then the siege comes to an end. I honestly think that this episode was one of the most edge of your seat episodes ever, filled with drama and shocks. It was also the episode where Boomer helps Lizzie to die, and it's also the episode where Joan is brought back from the dead. An amazing episode, which in some people's opinions was better than the final ever episode. Number 1, the women take over the yard. This is literally my all-time favourite episode. It's the episode where B is now the top dog and she's got full control over the women. Now, when B tells Joan that there is nothing more that she can do to her because she's been sentenced to life without parole, Joan teaches B a lesson by bringing Lizzie out of protection and into harm's way, where Liz is beaten up by Boomer after Liz did lag on her. B was also slotted by Ferguson, so B couldn't protect Liz, so B had a plan all set up with Maxine and the women. The women grabbed all of their things from their cells and they took them down to the yard where they built a big bonfire. Maxine and some of the girls had broken mops as weapons and they told the officers to basically back up. Vera ended up being taken hostage by some masked women who were threatening to stab Vera with a dose of Hep C. And at one point Joan was going to throw Vera to the wolves until Channing stepped in and saved the day. The women then break B out of the slot and throw Vera in there instead. Joan is then called into the yard by the women, where Joan sees B standing there waiting for her. B and Joan then have a standoff in the yard, and B tells Joan, "You don't run this prison, I do." The women then all walk off back to their cells and Joan is standing there by the bonfire looking absolutely pissed off and angry. It was an incredible whole episode, which set up season 3 to be a fantastic season. I can remember when this episode first aired, I literally watched it about 4 times in one day. I loved it that much. It was literally Wentworth at its best. And that was my top 10 favourite Wentworth episodes. So guys, what did you think of the list? Were there any episodes on this list that you didn't like? Let me know what some of your favourite episodes are in the comments box below. Like I said guys, this was a hard list to combine, so I'm probably going to be making a part 2 of this video series, but guys, let me know what you think. And on that note, it's now time for some comment replies. So we've got Michelle82478. Great video, Craig. Loved all your picks, and I agree with you on Judy being your least liked character. She was the absolute worst. She really was, wasn't she, Michelle? I will forever remember the nickname that you gave Judy on your YouTube videos. It was brilliant. And whenever I think of it, I listen to it in your voice as well. Thanks for your comment, Michelle, and I really hope you're feeling better. Ricky Corbett, Happy New Year, Craig. I agree with your list. For me, Kaz's death was a shocker, as I definitely wasn't expecting it. Where can I watch Screw? It sounds interesting, but I live in New Zealand. Well, first things first, Happy New Year to you too, Ricky. I hope you've had a good one. Yes, Kaz's death was a complete shocker, but I accidentally went on Twitter before I saw this episode, so it was kind of spoiled for me, but it's one of those spoilers where I'm kind of glad I did find out before I watched it, because I think my heart might have stopped otherwise. And that new TV show Screw, well, if you're in New Zealand, I'm not entirely sure, you might have to maybe download a VPN, and then I think if you go on channel4.com, they have like a little platform where you can stream everything, so I'm not sure whether if that's worth trying, but if not, I'm sure there's other websites where they've got like TV shows. Have a little Google, have a little look around. Me and Peter actually finished watching Screw last night. It's only 6 episodes for season 1, but it was really good. I'm actually thinking of doing a review on it, a spoiler-free review, so I won't give any spoilers, but I'm thinking of doing a very short review and posting it on this page, because for me personally, it was a completely different show to Wentworth, but it was still really good. I'm surprised how much I really enjoyed it, so I might do a review on it as well. But yeah, what I'd say, Ricky, is just have a Google around, and it should hopefully you should find it somewhere. Thank you for your comment. Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston. I would put B's death at the top. That was the saddest one for me. At my sister's on Christmas Day, my niece asked me what I got for Christmas. When I mentioned I got Wentworth Season 8 Part 2, we got into a discussion about our favourite characters in the show. She said she was halfway through the last season. Wow, that's amazing. Well, first things first, B's death was always my number 1 until Lizzie's one happened. But yeah, I totally feel it. I always feel Liz and B's death could possibly be like a joint number 1, maybe. Sounds like you had a really nice Christmas as well, and do you know what? I love it when I discover a friend or a family member who haven't seen Wentworth, but they're like, I don't know, halfway through a season, because I get really excited for them, and I always like to sit down with them to see their first experience with Wentworth, so I absolutely love that. But thank you for your comment, and thank you all for your comments. You're all bloody wonderful and brilliant, and I love every single one of you. Keep those comments coming. Okay guys, well that's all for today. Make sure to share this video if you enjoyed it with your friends, and make sure that you smash that subscribe button. Stay safe out there guys, I'll see you again very soon.